Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming today. We have myself, Mark Edwards, on the line, and we've also got Andy Brookfield, our business systems consultant, who's also going to talk to you today. And we've also got Jordan Whitaker, who's on the session, who's going to be answering some questions. Just on the question front, before we get going, at the top right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a little question mark in the conversation symbol. If you click that, you'll see the screen that comes up below you, where you can put questions in on the right-hand side. And we just ask, if you can, to put your name where it says your name optional and the question below it. It'll help us keep track of multiple questions that come in, and it'll also mean we'll come back to you afterwards if there's anything we can't answer. Today's session is all about the 365 overarching application suite, and to kind of give an executive overview of that. First of all, though, before we get into that, we've just got some quick updates on Seriun. So those who know us, we're a technology company who provide managed IT support, telecoms and software solutions. We're a Microsoft Silver partner. We also do 3CX hosted phone systems and Dynamics from the Microsoft stack of products. We've covered those kind of things before, so we just wanted to cover some additional bits this time. So we are also a software development company, and we've developed a product called Empower. The website is empower.me. It's an employee engagement solution, which we've been using internally now for 6-7 months actually, and it rewards staff based on KPIs, but it allows them to spend diamonds, which convert into monetary value, and we've built a shop within there. So our staff, for example, if they get positive feedback from customers, they get diamonds and they can convert them into anything from a KFC bucket. Now you can go back to KFC through the drive-through, all the way to experience days. It's also a full appraisal system and a one-to-one system, and it's really pushed forward the employee engagement we have with our staff, and it's something that we're pushing out to the market as well. So please have a go and have a look at empower.me if you've got time. We also are in the customer service business. That's a business which you never can stand still in. So we work heavily on service improvements, and we do a huge amount of continual improvement. For example, we do meetings every Friday to discuss the service we've delivered over the previous week, what our expectations are for next week, but also what we can learn and what we can build into our processes. And that's a huge thing that we've been doing, but we've never really talked about it, and we want to start publicising it and get feedback from customers and people who are potential customers about what service they would like and how they would like to see it increase, if anything else. That leads on very much to what we're moving forward to over this year, which is what we call, what is known as an XLA. In our industry, a lot of IT companies and a lot of businesses who work to these kind of metrics use something called an SLA, or a service level agreement. That's normally, we will respond to your ticket or phone call within 4 hours. It's never been ideal because that's normally a fallback position. What's the industry and what we're trying to push forward as a leading example is an XLA, which is the customer experience. More about how you interact with your PCs, if they're fast, slow, if you've had a good day using Outlook or a bad day using Teams, and the experience you have of those applications and infrastructure, instead of just basically fixing your server when it turns off, which a traditional SLA works to. So we're trying to drive and help the industry move forward in what we do personally, to move forward in this XLA world. And you'll see a lot of literature come out about that, but also how we're changing and hopefully improving our service even more into that world as well. But again, please feedback if you're a customer on what you'd like to see, because that's ultimately what matters. We have an email address called of social@seriun.co.uk, which you can drop information onto, and that is taken seriously at every step. What we're here today, though, for is to talk about Microsoft 365, formerly Office 365, and we've covered that a lot in our previous presentation, so we won't go over the renaming, but what applications are included and good real-world examples of where you can use those within your suite of products. The reason why we put up the subscription level on here is to just give you an idea of what you may be paying for at the moment if you're a Microsoft 365 subscriber. And there are multiple levels. So the ones which you use the most are the business, basic, standard and premium. So the business ranges. There is also the enterprise ranges. It's worthy of note that everything we talk about today, you get included in one or multiple of these subscriptions. In fact, near enough all bar the last couple of items that Andy's going to cover are included in different levels. 90% of what we talk about is included at every level. We'll highlight any applications which are not included or they're a bit random, to be honest. But it's also worthy of note of you considering what subscriptions you've got. Microsoft, for example, have just made a change to their subscriptions. So if you've got a lot of people on the Office 365 E3, which is Enterprise Level 3 at £17.60, for example, the Business Premium one at £15.10 replaces a huge amount of that. It's a little bit cheaper, save yourself £2.50 a month. But if you've got a lot of users on that, it can have a real positive impact on what you're paying Microsoft without any loss of functionality. So Microsoft are going through a bit of a marketing change with renaming and also rebranding. What we want to highlight to people is it's always worth a little refresher of what you're paying for in licenses against what people actually use. And if we're your support company, by all means, just contact us and we'll happily go through that with you and hopefully make it more cost effective, but also make sure you've got access to all the applications we're going to talk about. What we're actually going to talk about today is basically this. So this slide, our lovely marketing manager Laura put together for a webinar probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now. We felt in that webinar we were doing, which was based around a couple of these applications, that the Microsoft 365 collections or the different types of applications they've got in what you're paying for is a bit disjointed, not as per se what's delivered, but just the understanding of what's available. And near enough every webinar we've done, we've always been asked a question to give an overarching view of what's in the product stack and where they could be used. It can look a bit confusing and a bit, well, you can't see the wood for the trees, to be honest, because there's so much. And there is also usually more than one way to skin a cat. Our job as IT professionals is to give you an idea of what's actually in the mix, what's there and what's available. And what we're going to go through today is each one of these 5 sections, a little bit in more detail than just this slide, not as much detail as the previous webinars we've done, and Jordan on the chats will put the links to the previous webinars when relevant, so you can go and watch them if that piques your interest. Really what we hope you get from this session today is that we'll show you each one of these bit by bit, as in just an kind of executive overview. If something piques your interest or you've got a process within your business which has been around for ages and you feel actually this application might take away that process or automate it or make it much better and give you better service to your customers, just drop us a line and we can provide more detail on it. Or the previous webinars, as mentioned, will probably give you all the detail to have a go and watch. A decent number of these are self-service where you can set them up and use them yourselves, basically. Some, especially in the power platforms, are more consultancy-led, but in general, you can take these up and have a go yourself. So, first ones we're going to have a quick chat about is the Office apps. We'll skim through these a little bit, mainly because we assume you know them all already because they're so prevalent. So most subscriptions from the £9.40 upwards, the business standard one, include Word, Excel, OneNote and PowerPoint for your desktops. The cheaper one, the basic one, actually includes all these applications for in the web as well. And that's a really important point. These days, a lot of what you get in the Microsoft 365 products are web-based as well as application-based and also mobile-based. So if you feel that you're on a device that is not yours, you can log into your 365 portal. And sorry, I did skim over this. All of the things that we talk about, you'll be able to get access to through the Microsoft portal, which is www.office.com. You'll log into that using your email address and whatever your email address password is. It could be the same one as your PC, depending how your network is set up. But if you go into that, the first page you're given, you'll have a list of your regular apps, but then there's a button which says all apps. That will then take you into everything we're talking about today. And that includes getting access to Word, Excel, OneNote and PowerPoint online. These are traditionally used day in, day out by everybody. And what's important about these is they're not particularly dynamic applications like the ones we're going to talk about later. They're more about applications to access data that are in other applications within 365. So you use Word to get access to a file that's in SharePoint or OneDrive or is in an attachment in an email. But what's changed so much over the last few years because of the technology improvements within 365 is these applications allow you to share information more. So traditionally, if we were talking 3 or 4 years ago, if someone in your business said, "Oh, I'm working on that Word file, can we just have a look at it?" You would attach the Word file to an email. You'd send that Word file to person B, so that will be a copy of that file. And then you would both have a separate copy of that Word file and you would work on it separately, look at your detail and put it together. Or you would use a network share, so you'd have a P drive or an M drive, and you say, right, the Word file's here, but only you can look at it at the same once, and we can't look at it together. What is now embedded into these applications is you can basically share these out. So I've just taken a quick screenshot of my Word. If you go to File and Share, you get a pop-up like this, and you ping out a link to these documents to other people. And that means that they're linked into other applications. So you're not moving the Word or the Excel file from point A to point B. It stays where it exists. So that could be your SharePoint, your OneDrive, or in Teams. And you send the link out via some of these linked apps. So as we go through some of these slides today, we're going to show you where other applications within 365 integrate with other applications. So you send a Word.
Stealing my thunder a little bit there from some of the later slides, but yeah.
Yeah, I definitely won't steal Andy's thunder because he's prepped a little bit for this. But you send out documents, etc., through Outlook or Teams via URLs, but they live in other applications. So when we look at the Exchange apps, again, quite a legacy kind of solution that's been around for a while. In fact, 365 was really made originally around email. So people who had servers internally will have been used to the term Exchange, Microsoft Exchange. That was how email used to be ran. It would be a server that sat in the corner, and quite an expensive piece of tin usually, and it would have email on it, and you would interchange email internally and externally. That then moved to Office 365 in the first instance. It was called Exchange Online, and then that's organically grown and mutated into Microsoft 365 and all the other apps. So you're probably used to Outlook, Task, Calendar, and People, or Contacts as it was previously known, and in all honesty, I still call it, but they rebranded it. Those you've already got, but what we suggest in this world, if you're using 365 for email, and there's very few people who don't these days, and if you're one of the companies who don't use it, it's the first step into the 365 world, because everything we talk about hangs around email. So you get updates from, like we said, from Teams and from Planner and all the other applications via an email. Email has progressed, and well, Outlook, should we say, the application has progressed really well. It's always worth you being able to update your Office 365 local applications on the desktop. If for any reason you've not updated them in a period of time, it's worth you doing, because you get a whole new features on there as well. And things like tasks, that links into OneNote. So if you make a task within OneNote, you can automatically link it to a task in Outlook, which will then remind you via a calendar prompt and push you to do that task. So they're all really integrated really well, and it all hangs around Outlook, very much so. But what we want to actually just promote more than anything else when it comes to email, because in all honesty, we didn't want to spend a huge amount of time on it because everyone uses it more than anything else, is the Outlook mobile app. So the icon looks exactly the same as it does on the desktop. Is massively worth looking at. I presume, we presume, and we have a lot of clients who already access email via their mobile phones, whether that be business or personal mobile phones. The kind of incumbent mail app that comes with iPhones and Android devices just gets you access to email traditionally. Microsoft have made their own mobile app called Outlook. You can get it from the Play or the Apple stores, and it looks like this. It has a huge amount of features over and above the normal mail app that's built into mobile phones. So it's really worth looking at. You can archive, look at more details, look at shared calendars, for example. So if you've got access to your other people's calendars within your business, you can see some of those from within the application. You get a huge more feature set. But what it does do, which is over and above, is apply a significant amount of security as well. So using 365, and if you really push 365 and put in place its DLP policies and its data protection policies, basically, using the mobile app, you can apply those as well. So for example, you can stop people downloading attachments from the mobile app. So for example, on the left-hand side, save not allowed. You can see policy tips, and by policy tips, we mean in Outlook, if you have them turned on, and again, it's really easy to do, so we recommend doing it. In Outlook, you can turn on policy tips, which, for example, when you start writing an email to an external recipient, it will flag up in your Outlook in the app and on your PC that is an external recipient. That stops you accidentally sending them wrong emails to external people that you may not want to. Not saying that we all do that, but it does highlight that, and you can see on the screenshot it'll flag up saying external recipients in this email, because traditionally in the native apps it usually hides the email addresses a little bit more, so the Outlook app can prompt you that in a more functional method that can highlight to your staff. It also allows you to remove data off personal devices from the Outlook app, not personal pictures and things like that, and have more control over what's out there in your estate. We're doing a session next week we'll cover later on, which covers a bit more of this, but we would heavily recommend looking at the Outlook app if you're not already using it within your staff base. What's also within the Exchange apps for certain levels of the 365 subscription is something called My Analytics. So you get this on the enterprise offerings by default, or you can pay $4 a month for it, or whatever that is in sterling today, if you don't have it. And it's a well-being solution and promotes mental health for how you work as a person around your collaboration and communication within 365. So we've taken these screenshots from a dummy user within our setup, so it gives you an idea. And what it tells you is, in graphical formats and infographics, how much you're spending on your work-life balance. And personally, because I use this, it works really well. You can look back over the last trailing 4 weeks and see when you've had quiet days, when you've not had quiet days. So for example, it'll show you your working trends. In a 4-week trend, what percentage of working hours are you doing meetings? What percentage are you focusing on your work? You know, in this one, it says usually your calendar is less than 30% booked when the week starts. So it implies, you know, that this person doesn't start the week full and then fills it down the line, or they're distracted out of working hours, which is a huge thing for well-being. You know, the days in this in the last month where this person actually hasn't read their emails out of working hours. So it's a pretty bad example, to be honest, because 6 out of 28 days is the only time they've not read their emails out of working hours. So from a management perspective, you'd be saying, you know, you need to take it easy a little bit, potentially, or depending on their role, obviously, they might work out of hours. But it gives you an idea in yourself, and this is emailed to you, or you can access it through the portal, how much you're spending on your work-life balance within 365. It'll tell you where you're spending more time on emails, chats and calls in Teams and meetings, and where that is spread across it. And then this one is horrendously amazing. I know a strange term, but if you look at this person has read 1,800 emails in the last 4 weeks, but most of them have been between 8 and 9 in the morning. You know, so they work on it in the morning and then they spend the day doing their day job. So there's a little bit of work-life balance that needs to be shifted there, not too much, but it also shows where they're productive. So they can see in the morning that they're doing a lot of work, and then they're obviously working through meetings and phone calls through the day and not reading too many emails. So you can get to this information yourself, and it's there to promote you to change how you work if you feel it's not ideal, and it provides a lot of well-being information. Again, that's an application that's usually not looked at, but definitely worth a look at. The next section of applications we're going to have a quick chat about is what we call the value-added apps. So the value-added apps, so we describe them like that because they're usually the little gems that are hidden away within the 365 suite that people don't know exist and haven't seen, quite easy to set up, don't usually need much consultancy at all, and give a lot of functionality. So we're talking about forms. And forms is a way to send surveys out. Planner, a rudimentary project planner. If you use Trello or Basecamp, it's usually a good swap out for something you're paying for that's included in your 365 subscription. Those two, for example, heavily link between Microsoft Teams, so you can interchange data in there. Sway is a really good graphical representation of documentation and more dynamic than just reading a PDF. And Bookings is a way of scheduling appointments, usually B2C orientated or SME sole trader, but is a really good way of dealing with that.
Hi everyone, I just wanted to come in here and just talk about some sort of real world examples where you might use some of these things and where we've seen them in the past. So forms is really good for if you want to get some information back off your staff or even external contacts. And where we've used it before was with the whole COVID-19 situation. We sent out a form to gather information about people's work from home setup, if they had a separate desk and a computer and a chair, and what that would look like from working from home. We've also created forms before for where do you want to go for the Christmas party, and also things like display screen equipment questionnaires for health and safety. But you can use it for all sorts of things. It's if anyone's used like SurveyMonkey as well and just wants to get some feedback on something, then you can create a form, send that out, and people can reply back to it and get that information stored so that you can review later. Now, Planner, Mark did mention briefly about like Trello and Basecamp and the likes. Now, this is Microsoft's sort of equivalent to them products. If you're looking at, well, if you're currently using Trello or Basecamp, it's probably worth you looking at Planner because you're already paying for this, so why pay twice if you've already got it? So Planner's really good for like any sort of project that you might have within your business, and usually, especially like any sort of smaller ones, like you might do a new product launch where you'd want to have them adding to the catalog or sending out a marketing bit of information to your customers to say that this has happened, or if you were going to do a trade show, if they start up again. Also as well, something like an office move where you might have things of have we got the desks in, have we got the computers there, and creating all of these different tasks. And then you can assign them tasks to different individuals within the group that are assigned to that project. But it can also be used as well if there's just one person working on a project and they want to go through their tasks and make sure that they've done everything and plan and deliver what they said they were going to. Now, Sway is quite an interesting one, really. It goes under the radar quite a lot, but I really like it. So a lot of people out there, you'll get loads and loads of documents sent to you, and it's quite fatiguing sometimes reading a Word document or a PDF where it's still set up in that sort of A4 page, but presented in a computer screen. And Sway can take these documents that you've got, you can upload the document and it'll automatically convert that into a more web first experience that's a lot easier to scroll through, where you don't have a page and you're zooming in just so you can read that one line of text. It'll sort out all of that formatting for you. And it's also quite responsive as well. So what I mean by that is if you've got different display sizes that you're wanting to read this on, so say for example a mobile, tablet or laptop, then the page that is generated off of Sway shrinks or grows depending upon what device you're looking at it on. And we've seen this used quite a lot when you've got information that's again quite fatiguing to digest. So if you've got a long document like an internal health and safety doc or an instruction manual or any sort of these typical PDF kind of things that you get, then you throw it through Sway and it just becomes a lot easier to digest for people. Now, bookings, this is one that is definitely, you won't normally see this, and there's a few buttons to click to get this to show up, but it can be quite useful for people. And what it does is, a lot of people out there will have the whole thing of trying to find a gap in people's calendars, yours and your customer potentially, or a partner that you're working with, and you want to try and find a gap that you're both available and you're sending emails back and forth going, are you free on this day? Are you free on that day? Well, bookings sort of takes that bit and makes that a lot easier. So you sort of say, here's my availability, pick a slot that's acceptable for you. And that can be really useful for things like business reviews, or if you do account management. And also as well, we've got an example on here because it might actually be prevalent that at the moment you might want to, if you're like a hair salon or a shop or something where there's an appointment that you need to book, you can get something in there, get all them appointments booked in so that when you're able to see these people, that it's all planned and booked in fully. Right, so next slide.
Yeah, the other value added apps that are in that kind of quadrant that again fly under the radar, but usually have some really good usage, especially Stream. Stream is basically an internal Facebook. So this,
Sorry,
we're using
you there. You said internal Facebook, YouTube.
Sorry, yeah, internal, internal YouTube. Thanks, Andy. So, for example, we're doing this on Microsoft Teams, the live events. The recording of this will automatically go onto Stream within Seriun. And what will happen is we can then distribute that back to YouTube for external usage, but internally people can access it. Delve is a collaboration tool that allows you to look at what users are accessing in terms of files and documentation, which you obviously also have access, but it also gives you organizational information for larger businesses. To do is quite a quandary, actually. It's replacing tasks, which Andy's going to talk about in a second, but it's good task management, basically solution to prioritize your workload. And then Whiteboard, which is brilliant, is a way to collaborate on a whiteboard. It's given away in the name, obviously. But in these days where we are doing more virtual meetings, I've sat in front of loads of people, you get out the notepad, you end up scribbling or drawing out, especially in what we do, which is quite technical. So we'll do topology diagrams. Whiteboard allows us to do that in a digital format via virtual meetings.
Yeah, so what we've seen before in the sort of real use scenarios for some of these is Stream can be very useful if you've got some sort of internal training that you want to be able to deliver to people. So that might be something like how to do something in your systems. You could do a bit of a screen recording and then build up a library of that for if you take on new members of staff and you want to be able to show people how to create a sales order. It's a really good place to store that kind of stuff. Also as well, if you had any sort of health and safety things, maybe because you can actually purchase from some companies videos that you can use for training. So for example, that might be manual handling or a fire safety course or something like that, and you could upload that content onto Stream so that you've got that available to be published within your business. We've got on here as well about Teams being a linked app for that, and if you record a meeting within Teams, the recording is stored within Stream by default, and that's the same case for if you're doing just a meeting or if you're doing what we're doing right now, which is a Teams live event.
Sorry to interrupt, Andy, but just a real world example of where that's been used. We've had companies use it for quite sensitive meetings, which have been recorded via Teams into Stream and then password protected and sent out. So you can use it for every kind of application.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of security around Stream as well, where you can say who can and can't access a specific video. Okay, so moving on to Delve. So Delve's a bit of a strange one. It can be quite useful if you've got a large team that work on a lot of documents and you want to see which is the latest thing that people have been working on. And what it'll do is it shows you that this document's had quite a lot of people making changes to it recently. So you can see that that is the one that you're looking for, especially if you've got like a list of products that you're going through and you're trying to update documentation on it, and at least that way you know this is the latest version of something. The other thing that's really good in Delve though, which is particularly useful in larger organizations, is you can see the company's structure. So you can see like the organizational levels of things. So if you've got a situation where you normally deal with this guy but he's not available at the moment, so you need to find out, well, who's his manager or his colleagues who might be able to help in his absence. Well, using Delve, you can see who that person works with directly and get to that information quite easily. Right now, To Do. Now, we did say it's a bit of a strange one, and yeah, so To Do. A while back, Microsoft bought out a product called Wunderlist, and that is now replacing on the web front end tasks. So what they've done is it's just a new front end as to how to view all of the tasks. There's a bit nicer functionality in there, makes it easier to see tasks that have been assigned to you from somebody else and for you to assign tasks to somebody else and see where they're up to in these different bits and pieces. So it shows you any of your flagged emails as there from your Outlook. So we've got on here that it's linked into Outlook, and that's because your tasks are in Outlook are actually now in To Do on the web. Bit confusing, I know, but it's just a naming scheme and a different front end to it. And any tasks that you get assigned to you from Planner as well also show up on To Do as well. They'll also show you tasks in Outlook. It's just they've renamed it and they've got a new front end to it. I'd expect tasks and To Do to sort of merge into one. And when you look at portal.office.com, for it to just show To Do in the next few months, just yeah, it's a little confusing, but I think that that's going to sort itself out shortly. Okay, so the whiteboard examples. So Mark did use some really good examples there of if you've got, well, any sort of meeting where you're using a whiteboard, but you can have a sort of virtual digitized whiteboard. It's really useful if you've got like a touchscreen device. So if you're joining on a tablet or a Surface or something along the lines of that, then you can do that sort of scribbling. And a lot of people like to communicate ideas out through that sort of tactile way of just drawing a box and saying, this is what I want it to look like, really quickly and easily. And you can have multiple people working on that same whiteboard at the same time. And these whiteboards as well can be tied into a Teams meeting. You can just have them separately as well. We've said on here about it being in a meeting, but if you just decided that you wanted to bring up a whiteboard, scribble down some ideas, and then share it with some other people and say, this is what I've been thinking about, you can do that as well within Whiteboard and just get them ideas down in a quick way. Okay.
I think it's fair to say, Andy, when last time we bought a notepad in our office, we just paperless across the board, aren't we, for example, and it's driven by all these different applications.
Yeah, OneNote's really good for getting rid of paper as well. So yeah, I'll just mention that briefly while we're on here as well, of Whiteboard versus OneNote. So OneNote's really good for if you want to type some text in and something like that, where you've got like some structure to it. And you can actually do some drawing in OneNote as well. So a lot of these things do have some crossover, but it's more whatever feels best for you. Whiteboard is definitely a sort of digital replacement for your traditional whiteboard, whereas OneNote is more of your digital replacement for a notepad and pen. Is a good way of putting it. Okay. Oh yeah. So we've moved on to the slides, and I've not noticed. So I'll crack on with this. So the next set of apps that we've got on here is what we've referred to as the collaboration apps, and there's quite a few bits and pieces in here that are there. So we've got Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and there's another couple on here as well, Kaizala and Yammer, which we won't go too far into. In regards to the Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive, we've done some other videos on them previously, which Jordan's going to put the links through for you. And we'll just go through now some of these. So Teams. Now, a lot of people will be using Teams now when you'll have seen the adverts about it on TV. And there's more than what they just show you on there. And it's this overview is to sort of give you an idea of what you can do with it. So you can have group chats and you can create channels which allow individuals that talk about the same areas to collaborate on whatever ideas it is that they have. So it might be, has anyone spoke to such and such for a while? And you can create them sort of group chats to make it available for other people to see. So that's really badly described. But if you want some more information on there, I'd advise really have a look at our Teams videos. There's loads of information, a full demo of it on there. It's also got the ability to do like online meetings. So if you're doing any online meetings through Zoom and you're paying for Zoom or anything like any of the other web conferencing facilities, Teams has got a lot of that built into it. There's a lot of crossover on it. And again, with a lot of these kind of things, you've got it as part of your 365 subscription. Why would you want to pay twice? Now, we've also got some stuff in here as well about Teams and document sharing, and it's a good front end for sharing, but really behind the scenes, that sharing is actually done through SharePoint. And SharePoint is where any of your files in Teams are actually technically stored. Not all cases, but I'll gloss over that. And SharePoint can be used to replace a lot of the functionality that you'd have from a traditional sort of network drive file system. It's really better for document storage. So if you've got a load of Word documents and Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints that you want to put somewhere, or PDFs, then SharePoint's brilliant for that. It allows multiple people to edit the same document at the same time, like Mark alluded to earlier. And it's got loads of things in there as well about sharing stuff out. So like we said, you don't have multiple copies of the same file knocking about on emails. They're allowed to edit the same file. The most people we've had editing the same file at once was around about 30 people. We had a OneNote actually with 30 people. No, it was an Excel spreadsheet, sorry. We had an Excel spreadsheet with 30 different people all filling in different bits of information on this spreadsheet, so we could gather information really quickly from all of our staff. We just went, here's a spreadsheet, everyone put your data in here because we need to know what's happening with this. And it was really, really good. The other kind of things that you can do with SharePoint is you can have lists. Now, lists are sort of a cloud way of storing some sort of Excel type table structured data. But unlike Excel, you can define what the data type of each one of them columns are and make it more structured. So you can say that that field is a number field and you cannot type a word in there or an email address, and it checks that there's an @ symbol in there and it'd be a valid email address potentially. think that's right. I think email is one of the options on there, but still. But you can structure the data in there, and you can have that stored. It's really good for if the sort of examples we've seen it used are like if you wanted a contact list for your staff's mobile numbers or something along the lines of that, or a product list. So you wanted to say these products come from these suppliers and this is usually our cost price, then you can store that sort of stuff in a SharePoint list. And they're externally accessible and connected to through some of the Power Platform stuff, which we'll come into later. So there's a lot of connectivity that you can do with that. And it's a way of really having some more storage for data without you necessarily having to get like an SQL server and doing loads of fancy stuff with that. Another really good thing with SharePoint and what it was really originally intended for, SharePoint at its heart is an intranet platform, and it allows you to create internal pages that you can use to show your staff some information. So some of the good examples of this that we've seen for it on here, we've got like a HR wallboard. So in this day and age, at the moment, you've got more people working from home than ever before. And whereas traditionally in your office, you may have had a big cork board on a wall with a load of documents pinned onto it with your health and safety information, your fire exit plan, who your first aiders might be, any of that kind of information. And what we've done previously with that is created a SharePoint web page, a SharePoint page with these PDFs, which are the documents. So instead of pinning it onto a physical wall, we've pinned it onto a web page, onto a digital wall that people can then review and see all of that information. It's all at hand for people. Right, so OneDrive. OneDrive is very closely related to SharePoint. There's quite a few bits of technology behind the scenes that tie them together, but just for clarity really, if you think of SharePoint as a replacement for your document storage on your network drives, it's not fully there to replace everything that you do on a network drive. I need to make sure that's clear, because if you've got some other applications that have some type of files on SharePoint, you'd really need
AutoCAD.
to review. Yeah, AutoCAD's a good example of it. PowerPoint, is that one? Not PowerPoint, sorry. Photoshop.
Yeah, any kind of marketing or graphical heavy, but there are ways of to implement those in the cloud as well, which we can cover later. Yeah,
so SharePoint is good for documents, but lots of other types of data. So there's a difference really with data and documents in these kind of things. So yeah, if you wanted to have a look at what you could do about moving all of your data into the cloud, give us a shout. There's definitely options available out there that we can point you in the direction of. But back onto the OneDrive stuff. So SharePoint is to your network drives, whereas OneDrive is more to your sort of My Documents. It still has the same functionality in there of like, oh, I've not mentioned this actually before, about autosave. So if you're working on a document, you don't have to remember to press save all the time, depending upon your options that you set. So you don't normally lose that, what you've been working on. And you've also got the ability to go back and review changes and revert back to a previous version of that document if you needed to. Again, from your OneDrive, you can share a link out, so you can have multiple people working on that file, even though it's sat in your My Documents. And it's again about preventing these multiple copies of files being across out in people's mailboxes and in their emails and attachments, and then having to collate all of them after the event and then putting all of these changes together. Well, using SharePoint and OneDrive, they're all working on the same doc. It's all the latest version of it, and it's always up to date and ready to go. Something that's worth pointing out on here as well, though, is in regards to backups for it and this reverting back to a previous version. It's kept for 30 days. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, and we're going to answer the questions which were submitted towards the end, and one of them's on that. So we'll go into some more detail on that shortly. And actually, I've just seen a question pop up into the Q&A, which says that, about the security of sharing all these documents. It's a really good point. When you share documents out, there is a lot of layers of security you can apply. It's encrypted anyway in terms of the documentation that's moved around, but you have a lot of features and options on how your staff share documents out from these solutions, and also how they're locked down and how you restrict access from people outside your organization, which ironically we've got a webinar next week which is going to cover that in more detail, which we'll talk about as well towards the end of this.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of security behind the scenes. So even though you've got these sharing links on there from both SharePoint and OneDrive, behind the scenes, your admin people should be able to lock that down and prevent people from sharing externally, different people from being able to do different functions. Another point I just did want to mention briefly on OneDrive, as where we've seen it used recently as well, is it syncs all these files up. So a lot of people might have previously had a PC back in the office with their My Documents on there, and now might be working on a different computer at home with their own personal device or their own personal laptop. And as long as you sign in with the same 365 credentials, you can get access to all of them files that you would have had traditionally in the office wherever you are. So you can work from home with the same documents you would have done in the office. Okay, so we did say about Kaizala and Yammer. So Kaizala, like I said, we won't go too far into this, but it's Microsoft's answer really to like WhatsApp. It's more mobile driven, and I don't believe you need a license for everybody who's in like a group chat on Kaizala, but it's sort of like WhatsApp, but within the 365 suite. So you're just keeping that information within your network, like Mark said about like shadow IT, but again, there's more to come with that one. So Yammer is Microsoft's like sort of social network, but for business. So the idea with that is it's your own social networking site. So it's quite good in the enterprise environment where you can create groups, but there's a lot of sort of crossover with some of these. And this is a big problem that you do have in a way with 365. There's a lot of competing products, and it's which one's right for your business really. And it's worth investigating or having a chat with some consultancy service like ourselves if you've got a specific problem on what product would actually suit you best for the problems that you're having. So like in Yammer, you do have the ability to have a sort of group and chats and messages that go through there like you would do on sort of like a Facebook kind of thing. You can invite external guests, and the idea behind it is that you can use it for like sort of news and announcements. But there's a lot of crossover with that you do have with Teams. So generally speaking, we do see that Yammer's got its use in enterprise environments where you can sort of have, it's just in a different way in which you can join these groups and teams, where Teams is a lot more user friendly really from the sort of SME environment. But a big difference really between the two is Yammer is definitely sort of like a web page front end for it, whereas Teams is more of a sort of app that has all of this stuff in there. Okay. Right, so the next group of apps that we've put together on here is what we're referring to as the Power Platform apps. Again, if you want some more information on these, we've done a video previously specifically on the Power Platform with worked examples of how you can use each of these different ones. That's really on the Power Automate, Power BI and Power Apps side of things. We've included in here as well Dynamics 365 and Business Central. They're more sort of linked into it because of the technology that they work with behind the scenes, but we'll go into that a little bit in a second. So Power Automate, where would you use Power Automate? Well, Power Automate is there to automate any sort of manual processes that you have within your business, and you can use it really to integrate different systems together. So there's connectors on both sides of Power Automate that you can do all sorts with. So you might, for example, have a SQL database that you want to be able to trigger a notification or an email to go out when a sales order gets created that's over £10,000. You might want to inform management of that. Or you could have it of a new line gets entered into a SharePoint list, that when that happens, it also gets entered into an Excel spreadsheet. There's all sorts of things that you can do with Power Automate. It's just about connecting something to something else, really. But there's loads of things that you can do with it. I'd definitely advise looking at the previous video that we've done to see some of the examples of that. So Power BI. Oh yeah, there's much more with all the different things that you've got. So Power BI is sort of, well, one of Microsoft's sort of reporting front ends that's available to you. Now it's worth pointing out that on some of these there is some additional costs, but depending upon what you're looking at, some licenses include parts of this, some don't. So again, have a chat with your IT provider, and they should be able to see what your license is and what costs will be to add some of these functions there for you. But Power BI is brilliant. It's a web front end mostly for showing you like sort of interactive reports. So you can have dashboards where you can click on something in that dashboard and it responsively changes depending upon what you've highlighted. So you can drill into your data and see where that's coming from. So you can just click on a column and you can right click on there and say get data and drill into the information and see how all of that's put together and rearrange, well, not really rearrange, but refocus bits on that dashboard by just clicking on it and seeing how that changes. So you can sort of drill into it and see, this is my total sales, this is sales by region, click on it and then drill in and see by product, and all sorts of fun stuff that you can do with interactive reports really on there. You can also, as well, in there, you can schedule reports out. So I know that there's still a lot of systems out there where you can't automatically say, I want to receive a copy of this report every Friday, and you can do all sorts with that. Right, so you've also got graphs and maps that I've mentioned on there, and it's just about visualizations really of that data. There's various ways of visualizing that, so you can have it with like heat maps, where am I selling my stuff in the country, all sorts of really good graphical representations of your data. Okay, so Power Apps. So Power Apps I like to think of like as Access in the cloud. So where you might have used Access before, where you create a sort of list of data and then have a form to fill in to populate that data. Well, Power Apps is like that, but a lot more powerful, hence the name, I suppose. And what you can use it for is writing custom applications and programs for your business, but it's all stored in a sort of cloud environment. Some good examples of how we've seen this used is like a site survey or a health and safety assessment. So we've previously created an app that you can use on your mobile phone, where you could go on site, take photos of the site, and whether that be a site survey or a health and safety survey, where you want to photograph the environment, say this customer, this site, these are some photos of here and some comments about, do I think that there are any sort of risks involved in this environment? So you could create a Power App for that kind of thing. Another type of thing that we've seen Power Apps used for might be, for example, as a digital version of a guest book or a visitor's book. So you could have a Power App to record such and such came into the office at this time and left at this time. So removing paper as much as possible from within your business. Right, so Dynamics 365, and that is really, now we've split out Dynamics 365 really into two bits here. So we've got Dynamics 365 and Business Central. And Dynamics 365 is sort of Microsoft's name for their line of business application suite and the platform that it lives within. Now, there's a few different sort of apps within Dynamics 365, and I think we'll probably end up going through some of these in another webinar at some point or another, but it's mostly in the 365 bit is more of a CRM side of things. So you have in Dynamics 365 your sales and opportunity pipeline management processes. So you can do all the way from lead through to quote through to one. In fact, it does order and invoicing even, that you could then integrate into your ERP. It's got case management in there. There's a project management module. There's also, as well, under the Dynamics 365, an enterprise level ERP, which is quite expensive. So I won't go too far into that, but more sort of what we aim for in the SME environment. There's an SME ERP product in there, which is Business Central. So Business Central fits more along the lines of in the SME market, and you can sort of think in the competing products in its area is Sage 200, SAP B1, is it? SAP Business One?
Yeah.
Right. And if anyone's ever used Navision, so Navision, Business Central is Nav. So Microsoft bought out Navision a while back, and Business Central is the now cloud version, web front-ended version of Nav. They've done a lot of work on it, so it's a really good front-end interface for it. It's modern, it's responsive, it's available on your tablet, your mobile, on any device you can think of, and it's a lot more reasonable than the enterprise variant of ERP on there. And we've done quite a few bits of work really with customers recently in getting them into a cloud ERP product, and it's sort of revolutionary, really, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so there's all sorts of bits in there. So you can do it for managing your entire business, from your financials with your nominal accounts and all of that stuff, your inventory and your stock. It's got sales and purchasing. It's got a manufacturing processing element to it, and even project management in there as well, including things like timesheets to see that this job in costs of time and materials versus how much we actually charged out for it. And you can see the full profit of any jobs that you're doing. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. I think what we pick up, and there's been a question about it as well in the Q&A, is there's so many apps, and it can be daunting and confusing. We wanted to give you a flavour of all the ones that are there, and we're going to go through the questions which were submitted in 2 seconds. But there's no right or wrong way of doing any of this. Do you use tasks or to do? Are you going to embed into Teams or SharePoint? What we're trying to promote is the traditional way of having a file server with a P and S drive, and a Sage 200 with an SQL database that's sat somewhere that you've got to back up, pay warranty, pay electric for, and all the rest of it for the kit, is a bit of an old way of thinking. Still some needs for that in certain industries. But ultimately, if you're a Microsoft 365 subscriber, if you consider changes to your processes, mainly getting rid of paper and modernising them, Microsoft term all this overarching as the modern workplace. And what that is basically is putting everything into the cloud, or as near as damn it as much as possible, then accessing that directly and securely from devices and not via servers. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. Obviously, me and Andy have to keep ourselves gainfully employed, and sometimes you need a bit of help in terms of ascertaining what's the best route forward. But really just have a think about the processes that you do that are paper-based, that you do every month that are a bit annoying, because there's probably something within there in the 365 products that help. And ultimately, if you're dispersed and you don't collaborate and you don't work through Teams or SharePoint, those are really simple ones to put in place that make a world of difference. So what we're going to do, just to finalise this off, just conscious of time as well, is just go through the questions that have been submitted and hopefully give you some more detailed, granular answers. So the first question we had was, I only use Office Suite for Outlook, Teams and OneDrive. What am I missing out on? Hopefully that has answered your question. There is a whole wealth of applications out there that you're probably paying for that you don't use. So really just consider the processes and documentation you have now and whether 365 will supply that. 365 is very good at providing, should we say, either entry-level or high-level solutions. There's very industry-specific applications out there, such as HR applications designed just for HR. Those can be quite costly, where 365 can help you step into that world through Power Apps, as Andy said, or SharePoint, and then help you decide if you're going to move to an industry specific down the line or keep with more of the high-end ones within the 365 suite. But there's a whole host, hopefully, that would give you an idea that's out there, and you might be thinking, oh, I do this now, and I might be able to put that into Sway, for example. And just drop us an email if you want any more detail on anything very specific.
Right, so there's a question that we were asked as well about linking 365 to Sage for marketing. Now, I wouldn't really say that you'd want to do it from 365 for marketing, really. So we had a bit of a talk about this. There is a marketing product within Dynamics, but it's quite expensive, really. And by that, I'm talking like thousands of pounds, really, for it. So what I'd suggest is probably looking at some of the other marketing products that are out there along the lines of SurveyMonkey or MailChimp. And really, you'd be able to just export a list of data from Sage, like your customer list, and then you can import it into one of these platforms and do the marketing from there. Yeah, so that's probably the better way of doing it. If you're doing it from the emails and you're saying emailing out for marketing from Sage, I'd probably try and avoid that as much as possible, because if you wanted to email all of your customer base at once on a regular basis, you'll fairly quickly get blacklisted, is what we find with these kind of things. So you're much better to use a proper marketing platform so that who's got all the protection built in there already, so that they can send out thousands of emails a day and not get blacklisted, because you really don't want to be stopping your emails getting out from your business.
Yeah, we'll follow that one up with the person who submitted it with some, because it is a really good question, but there's a little bit of thought process needed of what you're trying to achieve, but we'll follow that up without a shadow of a doubt. Is there a size limit on storage and space data files? Yeah, so in 365 within SharePoint, you get 1 terabyte across your entire organization, and any further space that's needed past that 1 terabyte, you pay about 20 pence per gig per month for. And also the number of users you have can impact that. Within OneDrive, each specific user gets 1 terabyte of space that they can put into that. And if you go over it, there's some ways of moving forward from there as well. But yeah, there are some limits on there. Very rarely do we see people breach those limits, because it's per application and you spread your files out across them. But don't worry about it too much unless you are heavily into graphical, and that's where it can have a part to play. Editing. Yeah, video editing, and that's in all honesty where there are some different types of solutions. So not to detract from 365, but it's all about using best of breed, and it depends on the role in the business as well.
Yep. Okay, so we've got on here a question as well about apps that exist to maintain personal development files, training, and things like that. Right, so on that, there is another part of the Dynamics suite, which there is so in Dynamics 365, there is HR, and Dynamics HR would allow you to do a lot more than just that. So it depends what you're looking for, really. Unfortunately, there used to be a separate product in Dynamics which was called Talent, I think, and that just really looked at that. So not onboarding, that was it. So there was an onboard product in there, and that really was more along the lines of these check-in list where you could say, has someone gone through various training programs? They've now unfortunately removed that and put it all under HR, so it's one product which is a bit more expensive. So it may or may not be worth looking at for you. If it's literally just this one area, then maybe that might be worth looking at making something in SharePoint on a SharePoint list for you, or potentially even developing a Power App for doing these kind of bits of functionality. So yeah, there's options out there. If it's a small area like this, it's probably better to write something outside that's aimed just for this purpose. Okay. So we got as well a question here about recording and managing client details and inquiries, quotes, invoices. And again, this is sort of like, so specifically on here, they've asked about Dynamics. And yeah, that's really a sort of bread and butter of the CRM world, is inquiry management. A customer has asked me about this kind of thing, and I want to make sure that I follow up and I can see all the activities that have occurred in regards to the communication with this prospect, usually, or customer, about a specific scope of work. Sorry, I just muted myself to cough a bit there. So yeah, that is the exact kind of thing that you would really be wanting to look at a CRM product for. But again, it depends on how wide you want to go with it. If there's just literally what would have been an Excel spreadsheet and putting that into an online version, then again, you may want to have a look at some of the other ways of storing data and just recording a much more basic level of that. Dynamics is really good, and especially on the opportunity and sales pipeline management. It depends how far you want to go with it. It's worth a look at, but we can see where we go from there.
Yeah, the last three questions really highlight where you, exactly like you've got a business process need or a requirement, and it's a bit more complex than just sharing some files in SharePoint, for example. That's where you do sometimes need, well, we would recommend you engage a partner. Not doesn't have to be ourselves, but engage an IT partner to look at some of what you're after and also define a scope. And actually, in these three situations, we would heavily recommend internally you define a budget, because you can scale from anywhere from £2 a month all the way to 100 and odd with £5,000 or etc. implementation. So you don't waste your own time. It's worth also defining your internal budget for what you want to, what you can spend on something which is a bit more complex. And we say that, and in all honesty, we'd recommend you do that before you kind of engage partners as well, because you'll end up just wasting potentially your own time in going through this without knowing the costs.
Yeah, that's a very good point, that, because you can do all sorts. It's like you can sort of spend what you want, really. It's like in a lot of these sort of processes, yes, you could have just done it in an Excel spreadsheet and you'd literally just have that list. But if you spent a little bit more on that and you got into like the CRM kind of world, then all of a sudden, even if you don't spend it now, in the future, you've got access to be able to use other bits of technology on there. So, we do have like sort of AI and machine learning and all of these kind of things that we can tie into things like Dynamics. So we could go through and do an entire thing of, so one of the examples that's on there is you can look at any leads that have come through and do sort of AI predictive scoring and see how likely that is. And I'm getting told that I'm waffling here because I do like these things. Okay, so we'll move on from that.
So the next question, just conscious of time for you guys, but the recording will be available if you need to leave. So the next question was, how do I schedule meetings in Teams and invite guests? We've done and general info on Teams. So there's a link there to our Teams demo. We've done 2.5 sessions, probably about 2.5 hours worth of demos on Teams and tips and tricks. I understand that's a lot to digest. But if you have a look at the link there, there's literally 10 minutes of all the basics and how to use Teams and how to do that. And very quickly though, if you're in Outlook, you just if you're on one of the later versions of Outlook, which you should be if you're on 365, you just click New Appointment. At the top of there, it says Teams Meeting. Click that, send that to your external person, and it'll include a link in your meeting invite to your Teams meeting. When you want to join that meeting, either internal or external, you just click the link and it joins it, basically. It's really easy to do. Next question was, I'm interested in which application suits our business needs. Confused as some applications seem to duplicate each other. We completely agree with that. As you've probably picked up from this, there are conflicting applications within the suite. There is no wrong or right answer. You cannot get this wrong. Microsoft always give a lot of forewarning if they're going to discontinue a product, which they do less of now, I must stress. It used to be quite prevalent, but it doesn't happen very often. Just try which work for you, see if they stick, see if it makes your life easier. You cannot get it wrong. It's always worth just going in and have a look and look at the applications there and have a think of your processes, and then just lean on your IT partner. We're not here to sell Seriun services, but we're not contracted to our customers just to fix their laptop when it breaks. We're here to provide this kind of level of value, hopefully, and that's what your IT partner should be delivering. So just lean on them and say, I've got this process, what do you recommend? And come and have a chat to me around it, and we've got multiple other people who deal with that.
Okay, so we've also been asked about like effectively reviewing systems to adapt new 365 apps, and it sounds like we're yeah, so this is exactly what we're sort of saying, really. What we would recommend is getting somebody in who can talk to you about your business processes, where you're struggling and where you'd like some more sort of advice, and someone who understands what's out there like us, to go through and match your processes and any issues that you've got with what's out there in the 365 world. That's really how we'd look at it.
Yeah, and just add to that, Andy, really important these days. What's recommended a year ago might not be relevant to what's recommended now, and that's not to say it all changes, but the technology is moving forward at such a rapid pace that it's our jobs and other IT people's jobs to keep on top of this. If you run a manufacturing company or you're HR consultant or a solicitor, that's your field of expertise. Microsoft are moving forward so quick that unfortunately what we said 12 months ago might not be true now, because there's a better technology to do it in and fix some of the problems. So just lean on your IT partner as much as possible. We got asked a question about, can you recommend an Excel refresher course? Yes, we can. A couple of ways that we recommend this. First of all, your local chambers are normally brilliant, wherever you're based. So, for example, our chamber, the East Lancashire chamber, do basic, advanced, intermediate and advanced Excel courses for like £100 online now these days. So really worth looking at. And there's also a website called Bigger Brains. Jordan, if you don't mind putting that in the links. That's an online learning platform that you pay a little bit of money for, and it'll give you, again, the same kind of courses for those as well. So you just pay a few quid for that kind of online learning. So definitely worth looking at. And I think it's also the way that technology is moving, being good on Excel is not a bad thing at all, to be fair. And then the very last question is, what backup solution would you recommend for backing up your Microsoft 365 data? Really good point. Andy alluded to it in one of his slides. You get 30 days retention as part of Office 365. So that basically means if you saved a Word file today and you changed it, it will keep that retention for 30 days. If you deleted that Word file today, but didn't notice you deleted it for 30 days, and then in, say, 60 days you wanted to go back to it, Microsoft will have got rid of that. They give you 30 days backup. Most internal servers on premise will give you 2 weeks or a month's backup. If you have additional settings like month end or year end, that's where you go further. So the same principles apply to 365. We sell, to be honest, a product called Datto SaaS Backup. It's about £2.40 per user per month, and this isn't a sales webinar. But what that does is principally is take all the information out of your 365, emails, Teams, SharePoint, moves it to another data center in another part of the world, and backs that up every month, actually 3 times a day, every week, every month, and then once per year to give you them rolling backups. So if you delete that Word file today, don't notice it for 60 days, then you get it back. Also, if you've got synced files from OneDrive, they are susceptible to encryption, because if it encrypts this, the local device, it'll push up that encryption up to OneDrive. So you want to restore from backup there. Again, if it's within 30 days, no problem. But if it's not, you've got an issue. So a third-party backup is worthwhile. And very lastly, Microsoft, unfortunately, isn't infallible. If they have any downtime or any issues and you need to access your data, then having a second backup won't do you any harm. And it's, like I say, it's quite easy at £2.40 per month per user. So future sessions, just to cover this very quickly, we've got one more session booked this week, which is Understanding Shadow IT and Data Security. That's a very IT sentence, but what it basically means is we've got a lot of distributed PCs dotted around in people's houses using personal devices. And actually, really importantly, people using applications that they just choose off their own behalf is what they want to use, Andy, isn't it?
Yeah. Just point out as well, it's next Thursday, is this one?
Yes, next Thursday, 11 o'clock at night. Sorry, 11th at 9:30 a.m. And it's Shadow IT is all about trying to stop your users just doing actually what they want, to be honest, and locking down that a little bit more, so you've got a lot more control about where your data is. 365 gives a lot of that, and there's some other solutions, but just some, and we're going to give some tips about how you can look and audit your current situation as well. In the future, we're not going to do any more of these sessions in June. We'll be doing probably some in July maybe, but we're actually going to move to short 2-minute, 5-minute videos that you'll see on LinkedIn and our social channels on little tips of the products that are out there. But if you really want to see a certain application, please have a look and email social@seriun.co.uk. On that note, thank you very much. We very much appreciate your attendance, and we will hopefully see you again in the future. Thank you very much.